Hey, this is Nakoa from the Funeral Procession, and you're listening to the Dan Chan Show.
So I'm joined by Nakoa and Bryan from Texan-based progressive melodic death metal outfit, the Funeral Procession. It's morning for you guys, I believe now. Have you got your huge American, humongous coffees in your hand? Have you?
I've already had my huge American coffee. Now I've got my huge American McDonald's Diet Coke.
That's good. That's good. Good to see, man. That's no surprises. Bryan, have you got anything going on?
Singer, I got to protect this voice. So that means water only.
That's good to know. Onion water, I've heard, is good, but that's a bit rank. But I'll be on a beer soon, so that's my time of the day. So how's things in Dallas, Texas?
Right now, awesome. I mean, we just got done playing our first big shows. We got to open up for Urban Culture.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a bit. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah, but that was an incredible experience. We got to play with another Texas band, Civilian Triangle. They're fantastic out of Houston, and we're starting to line up some next shows. And yeah, I couldn't ask for a better series of shows. That's
awesome.
For sure.
Awesome. Now, the reason you're here is because I checked out your album In Still Silence a few months ago, which is, a few weeks ago actually now, but it is actually a few months old now. How has it settled now in the annals of musical history? What's the reaction been like and what's come from this release for you guys?
I will say we were really excited to drop this album, but we were really nervous. We put a ton of work into what we have put out. I mean, it's 6 songs, but it's almost an hour long. Everything is 10 minutes long and very intricate. And we, being a local band, the scariest thing in the world is dropping music out there to nobody, right? And so I think we've been really pleasantly surprised by how receptive the metal community has been for the album. We put it out and we've got a lot of traction. We've got a lot of really positive feedback, and really, it's kind of been humbling the experience we have. I used to be in a band, a pretty big deathcore band called Hunt the Dinosaur. And I remember dropping our album in 2019 and out charting Metallica on iTunes. And it was like, I knew this album wasn't going to do that. But the reception that we've gotten and the traction we've gotten out of this album for me is 10 times more exciting because I feel like it's very genuine. I feel like the people who find the music and connect with it have done a really good job at letting us know that, hey, these songs are great. We love them. We want to hear more of this. I don't feel like the album sounds like an Opeth album, but we get a lot of like, wow, if Opeth was still heavy. And as a guy who's a huge Opeth fanatic, that's the feedback we absolutely love to hear because it means the fans are relating us to some of their heroes. So it's just been a really, really positive run, and just very thankful for everybody who's checked it out, taking the time to listen because it took a lot of work to get to that point.
Yeah, Bryan?
Absolutely. Yeah. On a personal level, I know Nakoa can attest to this. I was real worried about doing as much clean singing as I was doing. Because I remember whenever we originally started doing stuff as a band back, like way, way back, 2008 and stuff like that, the metal community was not as on board with the clean singing with the death growls as they appear to be today. Yeah. At least not in Texas. And so, I remember fretting over it. And then we started getting that feedback, and it's like, oh, it kind of sounds like Catatonia. I love Catatonia. It kind of sounds like Opeth, kind of sounds like, X, Y, and Z. And we're just like, wow, that's some great comparisons. How can you be mad at that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now tell me how you craft your music and what themes you like to go along with. How did this album come together?
I would say I write a ton of music. So, I write everything from acoustic bluegrass to deathcore and everything in between. So my real passion is what we're doing right here. I've done a lot of bands over the years, but this is always a thing that I come back to. So for me, it's really about just writing from a place of feeling. I try to convey a lot of how I feel, a lot of my worries, my anxieties, my fears and stuff like that into the riffs that I write. And so, when I sit down to write something for this music, it takes a lot out of me, and that may be the cheesiest thing anybody's ever said. But I mean, there's one song on the album, Forsaken, which is musically very personal to me, and I genuinely have a hard time listening to that song. it speaks to a certain period of my life that was one of the hardest I've ever gone through.
Right.
And there was a point where, we went down to our keyboardist who lives about 3 hours south of us, Mike Sanchez, and he was showing us some of the keys he had written towards the end of that song. And I literally just broke down in tears. Like,
Right.
it was a really hard thing for me to listen to and go through. And I don't even listen to that song. It's my favorite song on the album. But for me, it really is just putting my feelings, putting myself in that element to write the thing that feels how I need to express. You listen to something like Critical Apparition, it starts off very angry and very chaotic, then it settles into something beautiful, and it just kind of flows in through like that flow state of emotions when you're kind of going through things and experiencing stuff in life. So I really hope that translates to people. I hope people can connect with the emotional feeling of the riffs and the music as well. So
I think you can feel it in the album
really
for sure. You can definitely feel it.
Good.
Definitely.
Nice.
Bryan, what's your opinion?
Well, generally what'll happen is Nakoa, like he says, writes just a ton of music and he'll get it over to me and I'll usually try and sit down and crack out the lyrics and like I just kind of go off whatever the feel of the song is. And so like Forsaken, he didn't have to tell me. You can feel how heavy that song feels. And so it's just sitting down and trying to craft a vocal narrative around it. And because it always flows between those kind of ups and downs, I always want the story to kind of go from, if it's a somber sounding, addressing something somber. If it goes into something really heavy, I want it to feel that emotional, like rage or something, like in the story, like what I'm telling, And it doesn't matter if you can understand growls or not. You can feel what it's saying. And then when you look it up, you're like, yep, I feel that.
Do you know?
I mean, that's how I try to do the vocals.
Do you know when you're going to be doing clean to say, obviously, guttural? Do you know when that's going to happen, or when you're writing the lyrics, or does it come when the recording process comes in?
For me, it's always like I'll listen to the song and I'll kind of hum out what I think the right sound is. And whenever I just get to that point where I'm like, ooh, that should be growls, then I can kind of circle back at it and be like, okay, if I'm telling this narrative, what kind of story flows from, downtrodden to reflective to anger to resolution to triumph, and try and just craft the narrative from there. Then it's just as simple as finding the right words, which, for me, it's always been the easiest part. The hardest part is to make sure it's got that correct feel through it.
Yeah. I understand. Now, your tracks aren't, say, let's say necessarily short, right? I mean, you've got 6 tracks, 47 minutes. You got a 10-minute track at the end. How was it like crafting a 10-minute track and keeping it interesting? Because obviously you're progressive. You've got a lot of elements cooking in there. So how do you craft a 10-minute track? How do you keep that focus?
I just play to my ADD. I like a lot of variation. I like a lot of change. And so for me, it's easier to write a 10-minute long song than it is to write something with a standard pop structure.
Right.
I really struggle like putting I just wrote something yesterday that's got more of like a intro, verse, chorus, verse, bridge kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
And while I think it's a good song, like I go back and listen to it and I'm already like, oh, this is boring. Like it needs more variation. It needs 33 more riffs. And so funny, In Still Silence on that album, that was one of our original songs of 2009.
Right.
And back then, my whole mentality was like, let me write the longest song with the most riffs so we can fit the most lyrics in. And it was like it was almost like a banner of success for me to put out a 10-minute long, 11-minute long song. So all of our old stuff was really long. And so that's the one track from, our original run back in 2008 to 2010 that we brought back for this album. To me, I think it's, there's some really great elements in that song, but I can definitely hear how the other songs have evolved. I can hear the songwriting has changed. I didn't make any edits to that song. I just wrote it out how we used to play it. And there's some changes in terms of like the keys and stuff like that Mike did. And it's the only track on the album that I actually play drums on. Everything else is done by Jaron, who is just the best drummer in the world. So that track was a personal one for Bryan and I to put out there. We otherwise might have left that one off the album just because of the length, and I feel like it's a little immature from a writing standpoint. But for me, it's easier to crack out those 8, 9 minute long songs with a million different riffs than it is to just go back and cycle through that standard structure. And I
Mm,
think the structure's got a purpose. I think people connect to it better.
yeah,
I think that when you utilize more of a structure and you bounce between the verse, chorus type thing, I think people tend to catch on to it a little bit easier. But for me, I kind of get bored writing like that. So I
sure.
tend to, it's just easy for me. I can do riff salad all day long, which is a blessing and a curse.
I'm gonna circle back to that track later for a reason you'll find out later on. But when you're as a guitarist, Nakoa, are you always humming tracks? Are you always like I always like ask guitarists, are you like wake up in the middle of the night and then screaming or whistling into your phone and stuff like that to keep you wake up with an idea where you're driving down the highway with an idea or something has to you got no guitar nearby.
It's funny. I have riffs like, circling my head all day long. Um, for me, though, I'll tell you what mainly drives it is I love drums. And so I'm not a great drummer. My drums on the end of that song or the end of the album are definitely doctored up. I can't play as good as Jaron can. But like, I honestly, I think in drums all day long. Like
Mm,
something hilarious. I told this to Trey from Morbid Angel years ago. Summoning Redemption by Morbid Angel, that drum line with that little ride cymbal, dun,
yeah.
dun, 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 dun. Like that has been on loop in my head for 20 plus years now. And so when I sit down to write, I start with just a nice swing, a nice double bass run, and I just build riffs on top of that off of the ideas I've been thinking. But
Nice.
I do a think in music all day long. Like I'll be in a
Nice.
meeting at work and I'm just like
Yeah,
riff and
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
start writing
yeah.
down some stuff. So
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Now, obviously, we just touched upon your, shall we say, the first run of the band, shall we say? I mean, you're a new, but not a new band in my eyes. You know, you explain the history of the band for us and the long hiatus, etc. Because you're kind of like a band phoenix from the flames. You know, what's happened? Tell me about the history. What happened? The big gap. What you did in between, and
yeah.
and where you are now. Go for it.
So we started off. I started writing the original songs in late 2007, and I have a really good friend, Mike Sanchez, who is one of the absolute best guitar players in the world. Nobody knows who he is, and they should all know who he is because he's just a phenomenal musician. I had never programmed drums before, and he had been programming drums and doing all this stuff. And so I took him these riffs that I had, and we put together the first songs that TFP was based on. And so he hopped in on guitar for a little bit. We found Bryan. He came and joined the band on bass. And then we had this really incredible drummer back then named Mike Miller. And he used to play for a band called A Dozen Furies, who won like the VH1 Battle for Ozfest. They toured with Ozfest. They did a tour with Guar. And then he was a killer drummer. He jumped in right when we needed him to. And we had a pretty good run. I mean, we were starting to pick up some steam locally. We were starting to really come into our element. And then our drummer left, and he kind of got burnt out on playing music, was doing a million different bands, and just kind of needed to phase some stuff out of his life, which I understand. He left huge shoes to fill. We looked for about a year and a half to try to find the right drummer, and it just didn't happen. So Bryan and I laid it down in probably 2011, just kind of like, you know what, it's not the right time. We'll come back to it. Um, I went on, did some other stuff that I'm really, really proud of musically, but I've always wanted to have this up and running. Bryan and I have always wanted to have this up and running. So a year ago, last June in 2023, Bryan and I reconnected after a couple of years, and I was like, "Hey, man, I've been writing some stuff. I want to know what you think about it." And it was just like the synergy was back in place. You know, you put Bryan and I in the same room, we get stuff accomplished. And
Accomplished.
yeah. I know for me, there's some great drummers out here in DFW, but there's one drummer in particular who there's only one person in my mind that we could play with, and it's Jaron, who's our current drummer. I've done a couple projects with him off and on over the last couple of years. And so reached out to him, asked him if he was interested in doing the album. And at that time, it was just going to be, hey, we're going to release an album. We want to put out a really cool album. We want to, here's some new music. Here's one old song, but we just really want to put it out and see what people think. And it really spiraled into, hey, we have a whole band again. Jared, he was our original guitar player who replaced Mike Sanchez, is back in the band. So, you know, you got me, Bryan, and Jared, the kind of legacy members, so to speak. And then we've got Jaron, who came in, tracked drums for me, then really enjoyed what we're doing, wanted to get this up and running and take it out and go play shows with it. on drums. And then we had a guy from New York, one of my good buddies, Zodian, who did all the bass on the album, did an outstanding job, some of my favorite bass work. I'm a bass player first, guitar player second, and I
Wow,
always let
three
Zodian do
bass
my.
players in the band, man. That's a lot of bass players. That's a lot of
All
bass.
bass
Yeah,
players, all the way
yeah.
down.
Um,
Now,
we we let we worked with Zodian, and the logistics of him traveling to Texas from New York several times for shows just doesn't work out for him. So
mm,
I've got a really incredible guy named James Brenneman on bass, who I'm actually in another band with, where he plays guitar and I play bass in his band. So you know how that the band member thing goes. But that's kind of really where we are. We started off writing an album, and it's spiraled into the best run we've ever had as a band, and
yeah.
it's really inspiring to see where it's at. So.
hmm Now, the lineup change gave you, Bryan, the chance to solely focus on the vocals. How has this
Hallelujah.
how has this revolutionized your position in the band and being in a band's position like that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I remember whenever I had actually joined, I had never sang before in my life. I was just coming to play bass. And part of that becoming a singer was back then. We were like, well, we want to have clean sing and growls. And like our other member, Jared, he was, lead singer for Prophecy for many a year. And so he could growl. Nakoa had a cool scream. And I was like, well, I can learn to clean sing. So I went and like took singing lessons and kind of just kept up with it over the years. And we kind of as we went back into this project, I was like, I don't want to play bass. I just want to sing. But the only way I can justify that is I got to learn how to growl.
Right.
And so this iteration was me like learning to do aggressive vocals, which was an interesting phenomenon. But thankfully, doing the voice lessons, doing like the clean singing, actually made it fairly straightforward to transition to
Mm,
just singing,
yeah.
because it was just a matter of, oh well, you listen to other people who've done singing, they'll talk about things like dropping your larynx, like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I know how to do that. Oh,
hmm
and now you just need to hit the back side of your throat with the false chords. Like, oh, I know how to do that. Okay, let me put that all together, and then you start figuring out these other little tips and tricks. It's like, okay, cool, I've got a neat growl. Let's do this thing.
Nice.
So it has been a great transition for me. I love being a front man and not having to worry about bass.
So
That's
do
for
you,
sure.
do you enjoy it more now for that?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I enjoyed bass just fine.
Yeah.
But if I can put it aside, let a
Yeah.
Zodian, let a James handle that stuff. I'm more than happy to focus on singing.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, you touched upon it earlier. I want to talk about the shows. What's happening with the shows? I saw, obviously, you had that amazing show with the awesome Orbit Culture. How is that, and what else is happening?
Absolutely. I mean, especially with Orbit Culture, speaking to that show first, boy, that was an inspiration to get my game up whenever it comes
Mm,
to being a frontman, because they got that crowd going.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was interesting to see how they're interacting with the crowd. And I think, as we're playing more shows and loosening up and like watching other frontmen, because I'll watch everybody,
Of course.
because I love seeing what these people are doing and
Yeah, yeah,
getting an
yeah.
idea of how I could
Mm,
take pieces of that and incorporate it into our live performances.
totally.
Everybody's like seeing what draws people in. We try to observe and take in what is useful.
Yeah.
And boy, it was an amazing experience. And also, Life Cycles, the other band that was playing on that show, amazing group. Like such high energy. Loved watching them. The
Yeah.
Civilian Triangle, like we did just amazing. So yeah,
Yeah.
doing the live performances and seeing the evolution of our live performances has been just an awesome experience.
Yeah. So what's next, Nakoa? What's going on next? Have you got a bunch of gigs, or are you just taking it one show at a time?
Right now, we're kind of taking it one show at a time. So that Orbit Culture show hopefully opens some doors with us with AEG, which is one of the bigger booking
Yeah.
companies in the world.
Yeah.
And so we now have a contact through them. They seem pretty pleased with what we did at the show. They asked us on Thursday at 5 p.m. if we could fill in and play that show Friday at 5 p.m.
Wow.
And we made it happen. We came in, and it's a testament to the rest of the guys in the band being professionals. Like we've assembled a group that's really, really strong. And so right now, We have one more show booked in November. So we'll be playing with some really great bands from out here, hitting the Dallas side. We played the Fort Worth side of the house a couple times at this point. What we're really looking to do is get strategic. We want to get out. We want to play regionally. So we want to start booking the Austin, San Antonio, Houston, kind of getting out of our four walls, so to speak,
Yeah.
and going and kind of building some following in other cities and supporting other bands and just trying to really network. I
Nice.
think that's the biggest goal for us. So we love our scene out here. It has been very good to us. And anytime we play out here in the scene, we want to absolutely over deliver for the people who show up for us. And we feel, in the best interest of the people out here. We play 3, 4 times a year in Dallas, in our home turf. And the rest of the time, we need to be focused booking intentional shows elsewhere. So
Yeah.
when we come home and play, it's a big deal for us. It's a big deal for the people who are coming out to see us as well. So would love some touring. We're probably a year or two off from that, but the regional aspect, getting out, doing some weekend runs, some Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, stuff like that's on the plate for next year
Yeah,
for
weekend
sure.
warrior stuff. I understand obviously work gets in the way and stuff like that, and you got to be pick and choosing. I understand that. Now, each
Yeah.
answer this one, where would you like to play and who would your ideal tour partner be? One,
Bryan, I'll let you go first.
Oh yeah. Let's see here. Ideal tour partner. Let's see if we can get. I remember we went and saw them live at Opeth and Catatonia together,
right.
and yeah, if we could play that tour, that would be incredible. Like,
Yeah.
what a huge inspiration for
Oh,
me
for
as
sure.
far as vocals are
Mm.
concerned with Catatonia,
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah. But where in the
Boy,
world would you like to play?
all over the world, man. If I'm going to start, I'd love to do a Euro tour
Yeah.
more than anything. I mean, I was a truck driver way back in the day. I've been all over the U.S.
Yeah.
I would love to do it from an aspect of, touring as a band as opposed to just driving down the road and delivering
Sure.
goods. But,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I understand
but
that. Nakoa, what do you think?
I'm pretty much in lockstep with Bryan. I mean, my dream is to play Wacken or Wacken.
Right. Yeah.
So
Barkin. Yeah.
I don't know if
That's
you
a
know
great
who
festival.
Frozen Soul is.
Great festival.
Oh my God, unreal. I don't know if you know who Frozen Soul is. They're a really awesome death metal band that's blown up, and they're out of Dallas, and they've played Wacken a couple times, and they're doing the European tour, and it's like, man, I see I know the guitar player Chris, and seeing some of the posts he makes, just oh my God, it's unreal. Like the
The
European
German
metal
crowd.
scene.
I mean, Europe is special when
Oh,
it comes to festivals. It really is.
yeah,
And that's the thing with the States. You see, you have all these music festivals, but you have someone like Dua Lipa playing on the same festival as Metallica, and that's
yeah.
a real head fuck. For me, I can't get these mixed genre. These mixed genre festivals really blow my mind. I just don't know what's going on. Now,
Yeah.
do you prefer stage or studio? If you had to choose one of the two,
Man, I'm 100% split right between both because I mean the
right?
studio is just as important as the stage.
Of course,
I love to write. I love to
that's
craft.
such a Canadian answer, Nakoa.
I know. But man, when you get on stage and it just all comes together, like, man, it's unreal. Like seeing people sing along with your music and mosh and move to it. That
Okay. You got to choose. You got to choose
icing.
one. You got to choose one
Ah,
for the rest of your life.
I'm gonna say stage.
Yes. Brian's going to say the same now.
Stage.
He's singer. Yeah, of course he is.
I didn't even need time on that one. Just stage. It's fine.
So I think you've touched upon it. But what's the Texas live scene and metal scene like? I mean, I had Casey from Hinayana on the show a while ago. He discussed it. From your perspective, what's it like? Is it a big pool of musicians? Is it a good fan base for metal, or is it more? What's big in Texas? I don't want to be too stereotypical, but blues and bluegrass and all those kind of things. Is it? I don't know.
I would say in DFW where we're at, metal's definitely the bigger thing. So we've got a really killer metal community out here. Not every show is just packed shoulder to shoulder, but the people that show up with purpose. They come out, they mosh, they buy your merch, they represent. And I think we've got a really good mix of bands out here at DFW, and I think everybody is really, really good about supporting each other.
For
So if
those that
you're on
don't
the bill with people,
for those that don't understand, I believe that's Dallas Fort Worth, right?
oh yes, Dallas Fort Worth,
For the rest of
absolutely.
the people around the world and us Europeans, I'm just guessing.
This
Right?
is such an American to only think about where we're at,
DFW sounds like a president. Anyway, carry on.
But yeah, the metal scene out here is great. I mean, we played a show this past Sunday, and it was we were supporting the Zabellian Triangle out of Houston, and it wasn't the most packed show in the world, but it felt like family. And I
Right.
feel like that
That's
every time you go to a metal show, it
yeah.
is just, it's a show with family. And I absolutely love that. And
That's
I've not experienced anything else like it. When I was in Hunt the Dinosaur and we'd play and we'd have a ton of people out there, it just felt like family. And then I've been in rock bands and done other stuff, and you show up and play, and it's kind of like, well, the 30 people you brought thought you were cool, and nobody else talks afterwards. The bands don't really kind of intermingle. But in the metal world, it is a group of
that's around the
family. We're
world.
all in the same boat. Absolutely.
That's global. We're very thankful to be in a scene that has that family feeling.
Nothing like it.
Nothing like it. Brian, what do you think?
I would say one of the things I'm really enjoying about the Dallas Fort Worth scene is that it seems like we're starting to move out of an era. It used to be pretty much you'd get a bunch of kind of Pantera clones because that was like the big thing that came out of here.
Yeah.
And so everybody wanted to have that groove metal sound. And now, as I'm going to more and more local shows and seeing these bands come up, you're seeing such a wide variety of music coming out of it. It's not so genre locked. And boy, howdy, it has been incredible to watch because it's no longer feels like people are, oh, I'm here for groove metal and I will accept nothing else. Or I'm here for deathcore. We had, there was a band that came out to our first show, the El Guapo. Great band. And their fans were incredible. They stuck around for the whole thing, completely different sound to us. Enjoyed what we were doing. We got to sit there and enjoy what they were doing. It feels like it has become much more widespread in what people are enjoying here.
Yeah. I understand. Now, just going back to your own personal lives, guys, what got you into metal personally? What started making you want to pick bass up or guitar or start thinking about singing, Brian? What music got you into the genre in the first place?
Well, I know for me, as far as singing is concerned, I had never even considered it until I had discovered Dimmu Borgir and Vortex started singing.
Yeah.
Who is this Viking with the golden pipes? Good Lord.
Yeah.
You can do this in metal?
Yeah.
Holy crap. And it just blew me away. I was like, yeah, I want to clean sing. And that's whenever I brought it up to the funeral procession. Like, I can do the clean singing. I play bass. I can do that.
Yeah.
And boy, howdy. Before that, what got me into bass, like probably everyone that's, around 40 was Cliff Burton.
Yeah, of course.
You hear Cliff and you're like, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I can very specifically identify the two sources. Why do you want to play bass? Why do you want to sing?
That's fair enough. Very, very good. Nakoa?
I think for me, I've always wanted to be a musician. I grew up, my mom and I have always had a very special relationship. She got me into the stuff she was interested into and listened to growing up, like Neil Young and Pink Floyd. And I got her into all the stuff I listened to as an angsty teen, like Korn, and moving on into heavier and heavier music. And, my mom and I used to go to Cradle of Filth concerts together. And so for me, it's like I've always been interested in metal because I feel like it's the one genre you can come do anything, right? I can show up to a jazz gig, and if I don't play exactly jazz, they're not going to accept it as jazz.
No.
I can go to a country gig, and I can do something a little bit different, and all of a sudden, it's not country anymore. You show up to metal, and you can bring out an accordion, and people are going to go, that was the most metal thing I've ever seen in my life. So I love that metal is this melting pot, and for me, it's just the place where you can go be the most expressive as a musician. For me, starting off, I started off on bass, and funny enough, the reason I wanted to play bass was I heard the first Korn album, and I had never heard a sound like that before. Yeah. And I remember the first song I ever heard was Ball Tongue, and you just got that bass break, and I was like, "What the hell was that?" And I'm a pretty solid bass player. I've studied Victor Wooten and Marcus Miller and a lot of those guys. I can do a lot of really cool stuff. And I always go back to, man, I probably wouldn't have ever gone down that path as a bass player if it weren't for Fieldy from Korn, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And then, moving into playing music, it's like, as I got older and more into like metal and discovered like Dying Fetus and Opeth and all these other bands that really changed my life, I realized like, I want to play guitar. Like, I want to write this stuff. I don't want to just show up and play it on bass. Like, I want to create the stuff that my heroes are doing. So,
yeah. Whenever I speak to US bands, I have to ask them this question: who does metal best, US or Europe?
Oh, Europe. All my favorite
I don't
bands are
know
from Europe.
now, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I thought
So,
at a vibe, all the bands you're naming, I thought you were going to say Europe.
so I'll tell you something funny real quick. So we were backstage at the Orbit Culture show, and I was talking to Frederick, the bass player, and man, we love that guy. Super incredible dude. Our other guitar player was talking to him a lot about what it's like over in Sweden, and Frederick and I were exchanging Instagrams. And he said, he was telling me how to find him on Instagram. He goes, well, let's see if you can spell it the Swedish way. And I looked at him, I was like, bro, all my favorite bands are from your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Fredrik.
Yeah.
He started laughing. He's like, no, you got it. So for me, those bands, man, like that Gothenburg sound, all the stuff that came out of Europe just changed my life as a musician. So not to say that there's nothing great coming from America, because there's some amazing bands out here, but
of course,
yeah. I think it's relevant in it's evident in our sound, like which side of the world I pick.
Now, you agree, Bryan? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
we're gonna try and elevate the U.S. and pass you guys.
Yeah,
but we still gotta work.
Some way to go. Now, this one when it circles around, because riffs. I want to talk about stink face riffs, right? You guys like guitar. In your opinion, what do you think is the heaviest riff of all time, or one of them? Because the reason I say this is because I got a slight stink face about 7 minutes 40 into the track In Still Silence, because that riff got me going. I was like, it really kicked in before your Dream Theater bit kicked in after that. Now, if you know what I'm talking about. Now,
yes.
you tell me about a stink face riff that you think is pretty heavy. Not for your own band, from anything through history.
Man, there's not much like if you got a band that I could put on before I walked into a boxing ring, it would either be Left-Handed God's intro by Behemoth. It is just the most powerful sounding thing.
Yeah.
Or honestly, The Hammer by Kubla Khan. That song makes me ready to fight a rabid Wolverine. It's so heavy.
Yeah. Bryan?
For me, Stink Face riff, and I think Life Cycles brought this back up to me. Domination by Pantera. It was they started playing that on stage at the show, and we were just like,
that's it. That is it. Now, I'm going to ask you this because American friends that we are now, I'm going to speak to you, obviously, from this side of the Atlantic. There's something huge and a pivotally historical event happening at the beginning of November. Can I ask your opinion on what is going to happen in November the 6th? On November the 6th? Is that controversial for me to ask?
Oh, coming from an election year cycle?
Yeah.
We don't know. I'm so over the political climate in this country right now that
the whole world's watching, man. The whole world is watching.
I know. New candidates. We want some new people in the mix. We want people who actually represent what Americans really want, what's best for the country. That's all I got to say.
Divisive? Is it splitting? Because I know that we had something called Brexit in the UK, where it was decided whether the UK left the European Union, right? And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Barcelona, because I want to remain in Europe, because I'm a proud European.
Yep.
And I want to keep my freedom of movement, shall we say. And in Brexit really did split people in half, in families and relationships and everything. Is that what it's like in the States?
I think it's becoming that. I read a quote a couple years back, and it's like, if you get off the internet and go outside and talk to your neighbor, you'll find out the world is much more harmonious than you're being told it is.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that.
Yeah.
I fully believe that, because I think at the end of the day, we're all just people trying to figure out what's going on in this world. Yeah. And we have more common ground than we're led to believe by the media. Mm-hmm. But I think that at the end of the day, it's better than the TV says, but I think we're headed towards something worse.
Right. Okay,
I think the truth of people.
That's positive.
Right?
Cheers. Go on, Bryan.
I think the truth of people's beliefs are probably more rooted in, if you're right wing, you want to do things that work, that you can go back through history and say, see, this used to work, it'd be fine. And I think people on the left generally want to be more like, well, let's try new things that make things better.
Right. Yeah.
And I think once you start misinterpreting it and giving it negative connotations for either side, like, oh, you just want to make things the bad way they used to be, or you just want to screw everything up so you can obtain power or whatever.
Yeah.
I think you've kind of spit the bit. I mean, really, we'd all just want to live good lives.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me personally, I would just like to see the politicians lower the price for the visas into the U.S. because apparently they spiked them up, and we don't get as many Euros coming over to tour. Yeah, and that's the problem that I have. Yeah, so let's fix that first.
Yeah, let's do that first. I agree with that. Now, what's on the band's bucket list? You know, what do you want to achieve? You know, what success will it take for you to realize or make you think we've made it, guys, or you know, we've done what we want to do? What will it be? What moment will it be to think that?
I think bucket list for me is just getting out a follow-up album that we feel like is a stronger follow-up than the first album, taking more risks on it, getting the band more involved, because, you know, the songs are written 100% by me up at this point. Bryan wrote 100% of the lyrics.
Yeah.
Our drummer came in, threw down some insane drums. And at the end of the day, they're album songs. And the next album, I really want us to take a little bit more risks. I want to get the entire band more built into the foundation of the writing and the really playing through things and seeing how they feel. Because there's some stuff in the songs where we play them live and it's like, yeah, the song's great, but I feel like if we had worked something a little bit different through the song because we were practicing it or playing it as a band and testing it, we might have made some different decisions. So the newer material for me, the bucket list, is just putting out a follow-up that I feel like blows the first album out of the water where I don't even want to listen to it. So I'm very simple. My expectations for what I want us to do is just continue putting up good music that we're proud of and elevating that game. Awesome. I think everything else that we want as a result will come from it.
Yeah. Bryan?
I think me and Nakoa do a really good job of setting goals, and then as soon as we've hit them, setting a new set of goals. I don't think there'll ever be an end. If we finish album 1, there'll be, okay, our next goal is album 2, and then it'll be let's play whacking, then it'll be let's or fucking, and then it'll be, you know, let's go and tour the world, and then it'll be let's go and get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, I don't really see there ever being an end to what we want to accomplish.
Yeah,
we're just too focused on trying to continue progress.
Yeah. Very pragmatic. I like it. Now, here's one of my last few questions, guys. This is an important one. In your own funeral procession, and from the world of music, who would carry your casket and who would lead the walk?
The Blackwater Park era lineup of Opeth. I think Michael's done a great job amassing some incredible new musicians. And the new single absolutely slayed, but that is the album that changed the trajectory of my life as a musician.
Okay. But who's that? Okay. But yeah, good. I like it. I never thought of that. The music side. I think you misunderstood the question, but who's going to carry your casket? What of your legends from the world of music would you want carrying Nakoa's casket? We've got to get real here.
Oh, that's tough. That's really tough. Bryan, I'm going to let you have that one.
Sure. I would just kind of start with, if we're talking realistically, every one of the dudes from this band, they're all just amazing people.
That's nice.
I think that even goes beyond anything else. I just love having them as friends.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to have them carried out, now if I have to choose legends throughout time, of course.
You can have one legend to lead the procession, to lead your casket.
If we're going to have one legend to lead it, the singer from Antimatter.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah.
Moss?
Mick Moss.
Because I feel like everything that dude does carries such weight and emotion, and then you can like feel it in your soul.
Yeah.
And boy, howdy, if I could ever get to that level, like I said, I'm always setting goals. So my goal is to be able to connect that emotionally just through song.
Nice.
So yeah, I'd have him leading the thing.
Nakoa, who's going to lead yours?
Michael Ackerfeld, Daddy A, my hero.
Okay, fair enough. Straight in, no problem. Now, what song from the new album should I play next, and why?
I'm going to say Critical Apparition.
Yeah,
it is a fun track. It has a lot of twists and turns, and Funny story on that one. The middle section where it goes to the slam riff with vocals, then it comes back into it, then it kind of goes into that atonal kind of progressive section. That is one of my favorite pieces of drumming on a metal album ever. And we had so much fun tracking that with Jaron in the studio. Like, I remember getting through the first portion of that and then telling Jaron, look, I want you to have absolute fun with this. Just go through this and make it something nobody's going to expect and just have a blast with what you're about to do. And so he worked out some stupid awesome parts. And, it's to the point now live when we go into that riff, we all just kind of step out of the way and point to the drummer. Like,
yeah.
because it's so awesome. So for me, that to me is the highlight of the album.
Okay.
And so for me, it's that song.
Do you agree, Bryan?
I definitely agree. Probably one of my favorites. And it gives me a second to just sit there and watch as that man goes insane on the drums.
That's good. Yeah. That's awesome. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm very excited because football season is upon us. I'm an ex-linebacker, running back myself from the UK. Are you football fans?
Which football are we talking
about?
I'm talking about NFL.
NFL football, yeah. I'm actually a fan of all of it, but yeah.
I'm a big Chicago Bears fan, long suffering. So we have a future, I think. But obviously, Nakoa's not into the football.
Well, you've got a new quarterback down there, don't
That's
you?
We're very excited. We're playing the Bills in 2 hours, and I think he's going to get the first quarter. So I'm going to get my beer going, and I'm going to get onto that right now. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, my very last question is: what is the most used emoji in your phone?
Heart.
Heart for you, Bryan?
Yeah, definitely. I heart everything these guys.
A black heart or a red heart or a pink heart? What color heart? That's important.
Red heart.
A red heart.
Love. Just love these guys. Yeah. And every time we're in the band chat, it's like love, love, love.
That's nice. All right, Nakoa, what's yours?
Probably the laugh cry emoji. I use that thing 53,000 times a day.
Yeah,
so.
Good stuff. Well, guys, listen, thanks so much for joining me on the show. I really appreciate your time and good luck with the future and can't wait to see what you're doing next.
Thank you very much for having us on. This is awesome.